What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to continue my brand new series of classic movie reviews, I'm here to state the controversial by saying that Rashomon is no perfect movie. And it, of course, follows a woodcutter and a priest who were witnesses of a trial where a bandit raped a samurai's wife and killed the samurai. But the thing that really confuses the two is that the bandit, the wife, and even the dead samurai have various different points of view as to what really happened, and all of them claim to be responsible for the samurai's death. And as they tell this story to a passing stranger, they start to question their beliefs about humanity and how honest people really are. And it's hard to really judge Rashomon on a surface level because I've seen plenty of movies that were more up to interpretation than this, that were easier to follow and easier to draw your own conclusions, but that's mostly because those movies gave you the opportunity to come up with your own conclusion. This movie tells four different points of view: the bandit, the wife, the samurai, and then a surprise witness at the very end who claims to be the one who definitively has the true answers. But because everyone's been proven to be a liar at certain cases, it's really hard to take that even seriously, and that's what adds to the mystery and the intrigue of the movie. Kurosawa has always made movies about differing points of view, and this is kind of where it started off for him as a filmmaker. It's about characters who see so many contradicting statements and decide what is the truth upon themselves. But when the stranger questions the woodcutter and the priest's logic in deciding the truth and points out their own inconsistencies and falsehoods that they either don't acknowledge or don't even realize about themselves, they become a lot more cynical. But once they become cynical, the movie has this optimistic revelation at the very end that I won't spoil, but there is there is optimistic opportunities to learn from these situations. The two of them become smarter. They start questioning people and their logic whenever they claim to have a true statement. They don't just judge people's words, they judge their expressions. They judge themselves by putting themselves into these scenarios, imagining whether or not they would make the exact same choices. And in the end, taking time to do all of these things in order to determine whether a person is trustworthy or not just goes to show that they want to have hope and faith in humanity, but they acknowledge that hope and faith come with a great element of risk. And that's a really important lesson about life that I don't think people really acknowledge that much anymore. And this movie is so entertaining just by how much it makes you think about what is the truth and who decides it. Now, in regards to performances, Akira Kurosawa is known for having very exaggerated and unrealistic performances because that's what he's going for. He wants us to know exactly what these characters are thinking, even if you can't read the subtitles, even if you're watching it without the sound. And in that aspect, it definitely works, and there are characters that you definitely latch onto. The woodcutter and the priest, especially, have these exaggerated expressions that show just how stunned, confused, and cynical they've gotten towards life based on being witnesses to this trial. But whenever they do speak, their line delivery, their tone feels very naturalistic, and it makes it easy to connect with them and put yourself in their shoes. And especially when this stranger questions their logic, you start to question whether or not you have lied about the simplest things in life and either don't realize it or just don't want to admit it because it would hurt your pride in front of everybody else. Now, in regards to over the top acting in this movie, the bandit is played by Kikuchio from Seven Samurai, who, if you have seen the movie, he's probably one of your favorites. And he'll be one of your favorites in this character, even though he's probably the most despicable for one specific reason. His over the top expressions and line delivery make him an unpredictably insane character, and you kind of get the sense that based on how many of these stories tell the exact same things, that he's a bandit who knows of his own reputation and uses his perceived insanity to his advantage, both in preying on innocent people or in combat with the samurai, because there are a couple fight scenes told from different perspectives where he uses different tactics in order to get his own way in life. But I gotta be honest, the samurai's wife in this movie, really, really over the top performance. Kurosawa with female characters has this really, really odd thing that hasn't aged well. Whenever these women are ashamed or embarrassed of themselves, which of course is quite often, they bury their heads in the sand and cry and weep loudly and nonstop. And that is, I didn't want to say this, but this really is the defining feature about her as a character. It started off where she kind of where she had a strong and feisty side to herself, where in one particular story she has this dagger and she is chasing around the bandit, and I'm like, great, good for you, finally a change of pace. And then the other stories, which are implied to really reflect on her as a character, she's just a crying weakling who really doesn't know what she wants in life. And I understand that part of her arc, I guess, is supposed to be about regret. How something you discover to be true turns out wasn't, and as a result, you feel guilty and embarrassed, and that's where the regret comes in. But wow, she was way too over the top to take seriously, even in an instant. This could have been a silent movie, and I would have thought that she was giving a bad performance. And it doesn't really help that almost every shot where it's just her in the frame holds for at least 10 seconds longer than it needs to, which I was really surprised by, because I had heard that Kurosawa edited his own movies very often, and I wouldn't expect something so drawn out and something that really didn't even make sense or seemed a little too artsy. And that's one other thing that kind of disappointed me about Rashomon. I didn't think his direction was as strong as people have built it up to be. It's not that it's bad by any means, and I'm going to start off with the positives first. He, of course, is very good at using weather as symbolism of characters and their motivations. The whole story of the woodcutter and priest telling the stranger this story is them hiding from a rainstorm under a temple, which of course signifies the fact that the world is a messy, dreary, and unpredictable place, and the two of them are hiding in this temple because they either don't know that yet or they just don't want to admit it yet. That symbolism is very easy to do, and it's executed very well. And there were a lot of shots of just characters looking up at the sun that for a while I didn't really understand right away, until the whole discussions about truth and some research that I did online about how there are some shots where you can see the sun in a bright blue sky, which is hinting to say that this side of the story or the events that are happening right now are true and that we're seeing it with clear eyes. And then, of course, there are shots where trees, branches, other people are blocking the sunlight, where I think it goes without saying the truth is a blur at that moment. But a lot of people brag about Kurosawa's swift camera movements, how he was kind of the originator of the Spielberg one, putting multiple shots in one take to disguise that. There really aren't that many camera moves in this movie. There are a lot of still shots that are shot in deep focus so that you can see every single character, so that you don't have to adjust the camera every single time, and the audiences can look back and forth. And normally I'm a big fan of shots like that. But some of these characters are so far off in the distance that it makes it hard to really judge their reactions because they're so far away, even with deep focus. The black and white, for the most part, was done well, although there were a couple shots where, again, actors were so far away that in the white light, it was actually hard to make them out sometimes. But the big issue for me, and I've already said it in regards to holding on certain frames, is that there are a good chunk of steady static shots that go on for way too long. All the things people say about Kurosawa in video essays, how he structures framing based on shapes. There really isn't that much shapes in this movie. There are some straight lines and some people who are sitting together in like triangles, but those shots don't really last for very long. There's one shot where it's the bandit, the samurai, and the wife all shaped like a triangle, and it lasts for like 1 or 2 seconds. They spend more time doing these Sergio Leone close-ups in much longer spans of time than Leone ever did in his entire filmography, and I didn't really see the point of it. I'm a big fan of building up in order to increase the tension, but there was build-up, and then the shots just kept going for twice as long, and there was really no reason for it. But I'm willing to say that if I did watch it again, and if I noticed things that I hadn't before, it's completely possible that my opinions might change. So this video is really only meant to be judged as a first impression, and as a first impression, Rashomon is a good, unreliable narrator story. Most of the actors are good. Most of the direction is well shot, and the themes themselves really do make you think about life and how truthful people can be and why they decide to lie about certain things. Is it to protect themselves? Is it to protect others? Stuff like that. But the acting that isn't good and the direction that really isn't up to par with the rest did kind of weigh the movie down for me. But nevertheless, if you have Criterion Channel, if you find any other streaming service that would stream it, give it a watch. It's only an hour and 20. It's even if you don't like it, it's not going to be a waste of time. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Rashomon a 3.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Rashomon, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. And I'm going to be covering more Kurosawa movies, so feel free to mention in the comments too what are some of your favorites. Be sure to stay tuned for more classic movie reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.